Hey humans, how's it going? Susan Ruth here. Thanks for listening to another episode of Hey Human Podcast. This is episode 312, and I had a conversation with Cooper Shaw. I met Cooper when I took 2 dialect classes from her at the Second City here in Los Angeles. She's a dialect coach, an actor, director, writer, author, and playwright. And I loved my classes that I took with her. I learned so much, and I found her really interesting and intriguing. And so I was very excited when she agreed to be on the show. I think you're going to get a kick out of this. We talk about her upbringing, what drew her into her career path, and she does a whole thing where she goes through different accents so you can hear how she can move through accents. It's really cool. The usual stuff, Hey Human Podcast, can be found on Facebook and Instagram. And you can find my personal social media under Susan Ruthism on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can email me, susan@heyhumanpodcast.com. If you head over to heyhumanpodcast.com, you're going to find a whole bunch of stuff. There are all the old episodes of Hey Human that you may not be able to see on iTunes. Some of the platforms only allow 300 to be shown at a time, but they're on the website, the official website. You can find every episode that I have put out. You'll also find a links page. Everybody who is on the show as a guest gets a section for the links page where their social media resides, if they've written books or if they're in performances or things that we've talked about or articles or, any of that stuff. You're going to find that the things we discuss will show up there on the links page. So definitely check that out. There is a store where you can find Hey Human merch, t-shirts, pens, book bags, that kind of thing. Definitely check that out. It helps support the show. Another great way to support the show is to rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. That really pushes that old algorithm. You can also show your support by hitting the contribute button. If you like what you hear and you want to keep Hey Human ad-free, please check that out. Every bit helps, and I really appreciate it. A YouTube channel exists, Official Susan Ruth. You can go there and see various videos. And if you go to susanruth.com, you'll find a mailing list and interviews with me that I've done as the interviewee, and stuff about my art and my music and all different kinds of things, whatever I'm working on in the moment. Speaking of music, if you want to listen to music I have written, albums I put out, find me on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music under Susan Ruth. My last record I put out was called All I Ever Wanted Was Everything. So definitely check that out too. All right, that's about it for the usual stuff. And let's just get into the episode, shall we? Thank you for listening. Be safe, be well, be kind, take care of each other. Here we go. Cooper Shaw, welcome to Hey Human.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yay! I have not seen you since Second City.
Yeah.
It's been a minute and a half.
That's been a minute and a half, right? Mm-hmm. That was, pre-pandemic. So, and maybe even another minute before that, right?
I want to say I did Second City in the first 6-7 months I lived in LA, which was, I had the wherewithal to move to a new city right before a pandemic.
Yeah, good planning.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. But from you at Second City, I took the accents classes, and I had a blast. And I just thought, wow, what a fascinating job, first of all, and what an interesting life, to go on set and to help people prepare for roles and all that stuff. So I thought, you know what, I got to get Cooper on the show.
Oh, cool.
And here we are. I like to start off with where you came from, how you came up.
I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, right smack in the Midwest, and basically in the suburbs of St. Louis. So I'm a suburban chick.
Accent? No accent.
Accent. Well, I didn't know that I had an accent when I was growing up and when I was in school, until I went to graduate school for acting, and my voice instructors there really had to like drill it out of me. Like, what? I think I remember one of my voice professors in grad school saying to me, uh, the voice does not match the body, is the phrase that I remember him saying to me. And I was like, did not make sense. I didn't get what he was saying. Um, but he put it to me like, you're too tall to have such a small voice. So I guess at the time I went into school kind of talking a little bit higher pitched and a little bit more like, well, yeah, like everything was like, I mean, I'm over exaggerating it, I'm sure now, but that was what was pointed out to me, was the voice does not match the body. And I was like, what do you mean? And he says, and this was in New York that I was going to grad school. So he said, when you go home for the holidays and you're around your family, just really listen to people's voices and sort of, see if you can pay attention to their physical stature as well as what the voice is and just all of these things. And for some reason, it really just like blew things wide open for me. I was like, what?
Yeah, the stuff you never notice suddenly is right in front of your face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, when you're growing up around everyone that has the same voice, you don't have an accent. You just sound like everyone else. And the other people have an accent.
Right. It's everyone else that has the accent, not me. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right.
It's like that old joke. What do they call Chinese food in China? Food.
Food. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Totally.
Was growing up, did you grow up in a big family, little family? Were they demonstrative and theater or more chill?
Well, I grew up in, I have two older brothers. I'm the youngest of three. And I think like everyone in the family definitely has a goofball sort of streak, like kind of wacky senses of humor, but everyone's sense of humor is like slightly different. Like my dad had definitely more of the slapstick sort of humor, where my mom's humor is a little bit more subdued and a little bit more like kind of deadpan, but everyone was always very much into storytelling. Like anytime any of the big family gatherings would happen, and this is with extended family, like, the mashbucha, as we say, right? Like the extended family network of people that are not really related to, but you're related, but you're not really related, but all of them were really just amazing storytellers. So it was just something I always grew up around, and people telling jokes and stories and, all of that. But I'm the only performer in the family. So.
Did they encourage that in you?
Not at first. Not at first. I think at first it was more, you're really good at math. Why don't you go into engineering? Or, when you think about being a psychologist, I think it was my dad was a psychologist. So he was kind of a big sort of supporter of that. And my mom at one point, because when I was really little, I think I must have been a little opinionated, because I can remember having discussions with my mom when I was younger where I thought we were just discussing something. But I just remember my mom frequently saying to me, man, you'd be a great lawyer. You should you should be a lawyer.
That's parents before you're very annoying.
Right. Totally. It's like, just do what I say.
Exactly.
Just stop the discussion already. So, but I think it was once they saw me in my first play, they both came up to me afterwards and said, no, just keep doing what you're doing. So at that point, they became very supportive. So, yeah.
Well, and considering the path you took, I would argue that you are one part psychologist.
It's really true. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot. insofar as being an actor, yes, and also coaching actors and coaching both the accents and the acting. It's a lot of psychology that goes on with it.
When did you realize that you had an aptitude for the accents?
Interesting question. People ask me this question, and I feel like I need to be better at answering it. I've always done accents. Like, ever since I was a little bitty kid, I've always played around with them. And just because they were fun. And I think when I was really little, my grandmother was from Brooklyn. So, and she lived here in St. Louis with us. So I was hearing the Brooklyn accent from the time I was a super little kid. And then her really close friends, she had several close friends who were from Poland. So I was hearing the Polish accent when I was a very young person. And then, and from then, I think I just was always listening to, oh, this is a new person. How does this new person speak? Or here's another new person. How does this new person speak? But I think it wasn't until I got into undergrad and I was doing my bachelor's in theater. And we started learning about the International Phonetic Alphabet and all the symbols that are used to sort of put a code to the sounds that your mouth creates. And it's also referred to as IPA. And I always make the really bad joke that it's not the beer. IPA stands for the International Phonetic Alphabet. IPA is a whole system of symbols that correspond to the sounds that your mouth creates. So there are different symbols that some of them kind of look like the actual alphabet that we are familiar with, but some of them look quite different. So they don't necessarily correspond to the alphabet as we know it, like when we're putting letters together to create words. It's a whole different set of symbols that corresponds to what is the actual sound that your mouth is making and where in your mouth does that sound place itself and all of those things. And it's fascinating and it's very expansive. It covers every possible sound you could think of. And I think it's always developing too, because new discoveries are always being made about the human sounds, and all of that. So when I was in undergrad, and I was studying theater, I started to learn about the IPA and got so fascinated by it, and then started to realize, oh, this is a method by which these accents can then be taught to other people. I was like, what? Because I think up until that point, I had always been just such a great mimic that I just figured, oh, people just listen to each other and mimic what they're hearing.
That's like the moment you discovered the mathematics of it.
Right. Yeah. It's a really great way to say it. It is. There is mathematics to it, right? Like once you realize that X equals whatever X equals, it will equal that whenever you come up on it. So it's like, oh, cool. And then you get to become like a little bit of a detective. Like, oh, that's so cool. Anyway, I geek out over it and I get super excited by it.
Yeah,
so that was that. So I think that was when I first started to realize, oh, okay, I guess I'm kind of not too bad at doing these things. And then also when I was in undergrad, I got cast in a production of The Life and Adventures of Nicholas Nickleby, I think is the entire title of the show. And it was a two-parter, like Angels in America is a two-parter. So there was,
I thought you meant the title was a two-parter because it took so long.
No, it's a two-part. It is. There's Nicholas Nickleby part 1, and then people go away, and then they come back for part 2. It was like a 6-hour something experience. So I got cast as this character in Nicholas Nickleby named Peg Sliderskew.
Great name.
Right? And Peg Sliderskew was from Scotland. So like I had to learn a Scottish accent. And I more or less taught it to myself, because at the time I didn't know about dialect coaches. I just knew that I was in this theater program and they told me to learn a Scottish accent. So great, I'm going to learn a Scottish accent. So I did. I was super nervous about it. I learned it. Apparently, well enough for the director to say, sure, sounds great. Did the show. And I just remember, this is another moment when I realized, oh, I must not be awful at doing accents. A couple of people came up to me after one of our performances and in Scottish accents asked me where I was from.
That's high praise.
And I said, I'm from St. Louis. And they both just went, what? And then I realized they were from Scotland and thought that I was from their neighborhood. They were like, where did you grow up? We must have grown up in the same area. How do we not? And I was like, what? And anyway, yeah, I was shocked cool. And also really, I just thought it was the coolest thing. I was like, wow, I guess I'm pretty good at this. I'm going to keep doing it because it's awesome.
Did that give you the bell to think, oh, I'm going to deep dive into this so much that I'll be able to seamlessly shift from person to person and get all these accents down? Do you know what I mean? Like to say, oh, wow, this is really my calling, even on top of the acting.
No, it didn't happen then. It's really weird. One would think it would have happened then. It didn't. When did it happen that I realized this was like the thing? I think it wasn't really until I got into grad school that I started, and we had to take official dialect classes in graduate school. And that professor was one of the kindest people at that school at a time, I think, when, an MFA in acting is it's a very sensitive time. Like, it's very sensitive, it's very sensitive work that we do as actors. And I think if you're going through a Stanislavski method program at a challenging time in one's life, it's kind of difficult to navigate through those things and get harsh feedback from instructors who don't know how to be sensitive.
It's a very raw expression of...
It was a very raw expression. And this professor was just so kind and so supportive that I think I took to it also because I really took to her as a human. And I also happened to be doing really well in the class and really loving it. And I can remember asking her at that point, how did you get to be a dialect coach? Like, how did you do this? Like, because she was coaching for various movies and TV shows, as well as being our professor. And I don't, at this moment, I don't think she had a direct answer for it, or at that time in my life, I didn't really process whatever the answer was that she had until... I'm all over the place right now. I'm so sorry. My brain is going like, oh, and then there was this, and then there was this.
No. This is how conversation works. This is my favorite thing. So it's all good.
So you're so sweet. So I think it wasn't until, what was it? Years later, I was coaching acting and I was also still doing accents, but as an actor, I was doing accents. I wasn't yet coaching them. Until I moved to Los Angeles. And people that I was meeting started to hear from other people that I was good at doing accents and that I had quite a few on my resume as an actor. And would I teach them how to do such and such? And I called my dialect professor from grad school. And I said to her, I was like, people are starting to ask me to do this. What's the missing piece? Like, am I missing a link in my chain of things? Do I need to have, is this something I can really do? And she says, yes, you do it. Just do it. She's like, you have the skills, all this stuff, just start doing it. So that was kind of in a roundabout, circuitous sort of way. It just happened to be that that was the work that a lot of people started to come and ask me to do,
Mm.
because they were hearing from other people that I was really decent at doing it. So I just kind of started saying yes to those opportunities as they were coming along, and then realized, oh, right, this was a thing that I've always really loved doing. And oh, right, this was a thing that so many years ago somebody else said, we thought you were from Scotland. Like, so this is a thing that, oh, so many years ago, is a very roundabout sort of way, but
Yeah.
like the universe having kind of
The plan all
funny
along.
ways of, right, right? Funny
Yeah.
ways of kind of like letting you go down whatever path you think you're going to go down, and then reminding you, hey, remember this other thing? Oh, right. Yeah.
What brought you to LA over staying in New York? Both being television and movie towns and play towns, I would think New York more than.
Yeah, honestly, New York got too expensive.
Have you been to California?
Yeah, right. But New York got too expensive, and I didn't want to have roommates anymore.
I get that. I always say New York is too expensive for the weather not being sunny every day. So if you're going to be poor, it better be sunny.
Right. And so that was a little bit of it. Was I knew that like my rent was always going up and always going up, and I kind of just was at this crossroads where I was like I'm either gonna look for another apartment that I know I'm barely gonna be able to afford, or maybe take a break from New York and see where do I feel like going after that. And so that was kind of it. Was it just got too expensive, and kind of felt like in trying to survive, I wasn't. I don't know. I was losing track of myself in the process. Like,
Mm-hmm. Talk us through, me and the listeners, what the process is when somebody comes to you and says, I have this role, I need to have an accent. What do you do to prepare them for something?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot that goes into it. So for me, it's first, what is the general region of the accent? And then getting more specific. Like, is it, first of all, how much time do we have to prepare the thing?
I imagine on a movie, you have a little bit of time, right?
Yeah, on a movie, you have a little bit of time. And a TV series also time. And so we look at first general region, and then we look at specific region, and then we look at who is this character, who is this person, and then we build sort of the psychology behind it as well. So playing around also with educational level, what is this person's emotional life like? What do we know about them as a human, as well as where they grew up, and all of those things feed into it too.
I would imagine too, let's say a character is actually what would call maybe a lowbrow English accent, quote unquote, but they're trying to infiltrate highbrow English society. And so, so that's a layer of accent where you can do the fancy posh King's English, but that every once in a while, maybe there's a little wink at the underbelly,
Yeah. Those are super fun accents to help people build, is those multi-layered sort of, this is how this person is when they're behind closed doors, but they have their public persona and then their private persona. And those are super fun things to layer in. Yeah.
Which is the most complicated accent for you?
The most challenging combination of accents that I've had, and there's like this sort of grouping that I really continue to spend a lot of time on, it's real easy to switch lanes between these accents. So there's the South African versus the Australian versus the New Zealand. Like if I'm not real careful about which lane I'm trying to go in, it's real easy to flip from one to the other.
Is it because they're so close?
There are a lot, for my instrument, there are a lot of sounds that are similar.
I feel like the South Africans have more of a ooh sound and stuff, like a longer, I don't know, like they say a harder sound and
it's got a lot more Dutch influence to it. So like the cadence of it is tricky, and it's just those are tricky ones that I still am decoding and making sure they're not quite in my back pocket, that I can't just trot them out and like show them off just yet. But
what's your favorite?
Well, I mean, I love the French accent. So many levels. I love the French accent, Irish accent, Scottish, of course, like my old standby, and then any manner of English accents. Those are my handful of ones that I love. So.
Yeah, when I took classes from you, great classes. You're a great teacher, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
You were fun, but you were also clearly knew what you were talking about, and you were very determined to help us. Always good in a teacher, you know.
Nice. Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you for that.
Yeah. But you went through a thing that you did with us where you went through many of your accents in one fell swoop. Would you be so people can hear the change outs and stuff? I'm putting you on the spot. I know, but it's so
I know.
Cool.
I had a feeling this was going to happen.
I know, because I'm a little bitch, aren't I? But I loved it so much.
Yeah, I could do that.
Great. And I just think people listening would get a kick out of it.
Yeah, let's see. What do we want to say? I don't know.
Your choice, whatever makes you most comfortable, since I put you on the spot.
Well, I suppose I could just start talking and then randomly switch every now and then. So let's see. I grew up in St. Louis, but I've already said that.
That sounds like highbrow English, yeah.
A bit, yeah. Quite highbrow, actually. And then we start to move a little bit more away from that. It's not quite so highbrow, but still bits of it in there. And then we start to go a little bit more towards Dublin a bit. And then we start to go a bit more towards Scotland, just a little bit. And that's great. That's my catchphrase for the Scottish. And then let's see what else. We'll go now to we'll go to do the French accent a little. And for the French, I like to talk about eating a lot of cheese and drinking wine, and it is a lot of fun for me to do this accent, but and then we go over to do a Brooklyn a little bit. Also the Brooklyn accent, I have a fun story about that one. Can I sidebar into a story?
Please.
So I mentioned earlier my grandmother was from Brooklyn. And she used to answer the phone at our house when I was a little kid. And she would answer the phone by saying our last name, Shaw. So she'd say, instead of saying Shaws, she would answer the phone and she would say, Shaws. And I can just remember from being this really little kid hearing my grandmother answer the phone going, Shaws. And I always thought it was so fantastic. I was like, Grandma, what is that? She's like, what are you talking about? I don't know. What is what? I'm like, say it again. Shaws. So I used to walk around imitating her a lot when I was a kid. That was a lot
I
of fun.
imagine New York would be an incredible place to hear all the different accents, truly just walking down one singular street. You hear about
Oh
50
yeah.
accents as you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, and the fascinating thing about that, when I first moved there, I wasn't hearing any New York accents at all. And I was any like, New York accents, the stereotypical New York accent, because I realized there are a lot of transplants, like a lot of people who had moved there from elsewhere. So like I wasn't hearing, I was really searching for it too. Um, and then I went to the beach on Long Island with my brother. And there was the guy, the vendor on the beach walking along selling the stuff. And I just heard him say, ice cream, soda, water. And I lost it. I slapped my brother in the arm. I was like, Rich, Rich, Rich. He just said, water. My brother was like, you are so weird. What is wrong with you?
Watching you move from accent to accent, that really strikes me. And what I learned, obviously, in class too, was to see how different the tongue and lips move depending.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
even whether it's nasal or far back in your throat or more chesty.
Yeah. Right. It's a really great thing to notice too, because it is very much, it's a part of your physicality. Like the voice is a part of your body. So there are different postures and, the sound resonates in different areas. So moving the mouth differently in order to get that in place. Yeah.
And I would figure that as well for any actor that has to take on an accent, that it actually informs the character that much more because of that, because they're we don't really think about it, right? We just talk. We don't think about where our faces are or how our lips and tongues move or anything like that. And that when you are taking on a whole other accent, how it shapes everything about you.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's really very cool, isn't it?
It's like putting on a mask.
It is. It is. Absolutely.
Or a prosthetic, having a prosthetic. Tell me about the acting coaching you do, just the general coaching.
Yeah, general acting coaching. I think I mentioned earlier I got my MFA in the Stanislavski method,
which is for people that don't know.
For people that don't know, is basically just another way of engaging your imagination to give you another entryway into the material to help kind of personalize the material. And here's where I get on my high horse about it. The Stanislavski method, which is also commonly referred to as the method, gets a bad rap. A lot of people think that it's that method actors are the ones that have to live in the role all the time, or really do things that are 100% that character. It's not really what it is. That's one way to go about it, but that's not really what it is. It's really just building your toolbox as an actor. And just if you're not getting immediately what you feel like you would need just from the text, then you have other tools in your toolbox that can help you get to it. So that's kind of what I do. Is I am like a go-to person to help with script analysis, personalizing text, letting go of the anxiety that can get in the way of just bringing your own core self to a piece of work. It's a lot of what I end up doing with people is just talking through like what's blocking the work at that moment. And audition prep, if it's specific audition prep that needs to be done, we do that. And so I have a wide variety of people that come to me for regular lessons and people come to me for audition specific stuff. And on-set acting coaching. do a bit of that as well, which
I don't think people realize. Every actor, all the big actors, they all have coaches that are on set with them, helping them through particular, all the biggest actors, the Oscar winners do it even.
Yeah. 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 And I love doing, I mean, like, can't even, I feel like I just keep saying, I love my work so much, but I do. Like, I love it. Love it so much. And, you know, just helping people figure things out. And, you know, it's just really amazing to see the transformation that happens and the collaboration that happens to get to that transformation is really kind of magical.
In method acting, would you say it's more let's say Susan, me, goes into a role playing Tammy Faye Baker. Well, let's pick a fiction person. I'm playing Barbara from New Brunswick. And when I go to be Barbara from New Brunswick, do I need Susan to go away and be put into a little box, or does Susan have to figure out how to meld with Barbara? How does that work exactly?
So the way that I approach it is finding similarities between Susan and Barbara so that you don't ever put Susan away completely, because you can't, because you're always there. So it's about finding what is the essence of Susan that kind of walks side by side with Barbara and kind of, yeah. Yeah.
What about in cases for a non-fictional character? Because then that's such a specific, you can't really make that up. That's really, I feel like a lot of actors talk about how when they have fictional characters to play, they inform their own backstory. They think about where that character is coming from and what brought them to that point and all that. But when you're talking about somebody that really exists in the world, you don't have control over that. It's everything they've been through, every perception they've.
And that's true. That's true. And then it's a lot of, research. It's a lot of research.
But is it the case, do you still have to do the walk side by side, or is that even less of a Susan voice if she's playing a Tammy Faye Baker?
Well, you know, that's an interesting question. My gut is to say that that's still going to be there. And what you're doing is you're finding ways that you can connect to those moments so that they can be, you know, that you're portraying a real human and you're finding where does your humanity line up with that human's humanity so that it doesn't feel so quote unquote put on. Right.
You have to be instead of act.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Right. And you're just finding like a backdoor way into getting yourself to continue to be a human. But just a slightly different human than who you are, right? But it's still...
It's an interesting way to look at it, that we're all acting human. Some of us more than others.
Right?
Do you find that you are more, these days, at least, acting coach or dialect coach? Or is it pretty neck and neck?
It's pretty neck and neck. Yeah. I think each month it'll change from month to month, but it's pretty neck and neck, with maybe accents and dialects or maybe winning by a nose.
When you get hired on a project as the dialect coach for an actor, is that compensation through the studio that they make budgets for things like that, or do actors hire you outright, or does it just depend?
I think it just depends. Right now, I'm more being hired directly by actors, more so than studios. But it does depend for sure. Like, what kind of budget do they have? And do they have dialect coaches built into their budget? Most of the big projects will have that. And then it'll, like I said, it'll just depend. But a lot of the work that's coming my way is individual actors who are coming to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything's opening up again, which is nice.
Yeah. That's really nice.
In theory.
In theory. In theory.
I remember asking you in class and you didn't have an answer for me then, and it's been a couple of years now. So maybe you have it now. What accent do you dream in? And do you switch out accents in your dreams?
Wow. I'm sure that I do. And I hear tons of different accents, I'm sure, when I'm dreaming. I think it depends, like, what one accent am I super focused on at any given moment. Like, if I'm on a project, then I dream in that project's accent, which is interesting. Or who am I spending a lot of time around at any given moment? If I'm spending a lot of time around, I have this one very dear friend from undergrad who's from New Mexico, who, when I spend a lot of time around her, I start to pick up on her accent, and I kind of start to speak like that a little bit. And then I dream in that accent as well.
I'm trying to think of what the New Mexico accent is.
Well, I think it might be hers in particular.
I'm just trying to think of the cadence of that. I'm thinking I was just in New Mexico last year. I'm trying to remember if anybody stuck out to me as far as, but then again, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so I feel like it's not that far from, they're not that far from each other.
Right.
Basically.
No, not really. Not really.
I started school. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I started school when I was 5. I attended school in Cambridge, England. And when we were living there, I had a full-on proper English accent.
Right.
We lived in Greece before that. I spoke Greek with a Greek accent, which is so interesting. Little kids, how they adapt like that. And when I lived in the South in Nashville, you pick up the y'alls and your cadence slows and you start to get all that down. And I was just visiting Kentucky, and it took maybe 10 minutes of being in the car with the people that picked me up to the whole rest of the weekend. I was yawing the hell out of everyone and lilting and speaking a little slower and just sort of, you just fall into these cadences so quickly. I think when you're little, if you're around a lot of different accents, it makes it maybe easier.
I think so. I think so.
But there are some people that are just Myna birds that, like you, who probably hear something and can sort of like hearing a concert piano playing thing and then sit down and just repeat it somehow. Just as some part of the brain lights up. And
I think that's really true. I do think that's really true. Like, some people just have it sort of this what I've been calling the ear brain. I was like, I don't know where that term came from, but I'm really loving it these days. My ear brain is telling me. But some people just have it's already kind of tuned, and then they take to it fairly easily. And other people work a little bit more effectively using the International Phonetic Alphabet. Like, they need the symbols, but then there are other people that those symbols don't matter. They confuse things more than helping things. So,
I saw an interview with Tom Holland, and he tends to play Americans in his roles. And he said that he does it so much that now he sometimes forgets he's English, and he'll just start speaking him in an American accent, and he'll catch himself, and it really trips him out. He said there are some of the actors and actresses really are when you hear their real voice, their real accent, at least for me, I think, what? No clue. Like Charlize Theron is a great example. No idea.
No, she's an excellent example. So I had an improv instructor in New York who, God bless him. I was doing whatever improv exercise we were doing. And every little bit of it that we did, I had a different accent for each little bit that we did. And then he said to me, I wonder what would happen if you just did it in your own voice. And I can remember looking at him and thinking, my own voice. And I had like, I remember what it felt like the second that he said that. And I was trying to puzzle through what that meant. And I was like, I don't know what that is. Like, I don't know how to do that. Like, what? It was like synaptic misfire almost. Like, oh,
my own voice.
My own. I don't know what that is. Like,
that's hilarious.
So I did it. Like, I tried anyway to drop whatever charactery thing I thought I needed to do. And I did a thing in my own voice. And I just remember thinking it felt like you were saying, it's like doing mask work. I felt at that time so vulnerable. And like, I had no protective coating of any kind. And I was just like talking. And I almost couldn't get the words out because I was like, I don't know what this means. Like, it was, anyway, that was.
I get it. I totally get it. It's really fascinating. And you were saying, I don't know, do you do very many podcasts?
No.
And I know it's daunting and weird to be interviewed anyway, and then to do a podcast is like a whole other level of weird. And I thought, I wonder, wouldn't it be interesting when you said that, if you get nervous and French is your favorite accent, wouldn't it have been interesting if you did the whole accent during the whole interview?
It might come back every now and then. I don't know, but
does it relax you to go into accents? If you have anxiety or anything like that, does it calm you?
I think it does. I think it, I wouldn't have said that years ago. If somebody had said that to me, I would have said no. Now, having had the experience of someone pointing out to me that I needed to speak in my own voice, and now making a point to do that more, I feel less like I need the accents as a crutch. Like I think they really were. It took me a long time to realize that I'm enough without needing to entertain people. And I would do the accents. It's kind of like, hey, we're doing some funny things now. Let's just like, because whatever clowning sort of instinct I have. And it took me a minute to realize that it was okay to like not do that all the time.
Absolutely. I get it though. I remember being 14 or 15, my best friend Jill and we would go dance. We weren't supposed to because we were underage, but we would get fake IDs and we'd go dancing at the Scoochies, which was a bar in Seattle at the time for 18-year-olds. Like I can't remember if they served alcohol there or maybe this is great. They put an X on your hand if you could drink. How hilarious is that? Because that's not hard to mimic.
Right.
But we would go and she would, I can't remember if I did it too, but I know she did it. She would pretend to be an English girl named Kate. And I think I pretended to be English as well, but I really can't remember if I'd tried a different accent. And we would pretend to be these girls from other countries. And it was such an armor. It was such a great protective measure. Aside from that, nobody knows your real name when you're using.
Aside from that.
Yeah. I mean, so.
That's the best. I love that. I did something like that when I was in undergrad. One of my friends wanted me to go to the bars with her and basically be her wing woman. And I wasn't really into it, but I was like, didn't want to not go and support my friend. So I decided I was going to be from France and just pretend that I didn't speak English because I didn't want the guys to like, I just didn't want to get hit on. I didn't want to try to meet anyone. I didn't want to,
Although a lot of guys would argue that's the perfect woman, one that doesn't
I
speak.
guess, but in my brain, it was like, oh, I'll just be French and nobody will bother me. It didn't work. It didn't work. You know, there were conversations that were had, and once I started being French, I had to keep being French. And it was like, okay.
It does feel like this to me. I'm in awe of it. So it feels to me like it's a superpower that you can go and be anyone. That's so cool to me.
It's fun. It's fun. Yeah, and I just just to ping back to this is like, it's fun, and also like I get to do it for a living, which is
Badass.
like what? I keep just like pinching myself that this is like, I get to do this thing that I really love doing.
Yeah. What fun stuff are you working on right now?
I am right now continuing to work on the South African accent. My continual journey with South African. And other than that, I'm writing a lot of my own stuff at the moment.
That's great.
Yeah. And so I'm loving that.
Are you writing like comedy or serious stuff? What do you do?
It's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Dramedy, I guess we'll call it. And I'm teaching and I'm coaching, and when people have auditions that come up and they need stuff, they call me, which is always lovely and great. I love that.
If I ever get a role where I have to have an accent, you're my first call.
Amazing. I love it. Yeah, I love it. And I love, all of that stuff. It honestly really just means a lot to me that people think of me, that they're like, I need help with this. And that I'm somebody that they think of that can help them with whatever it is. It's just super meaningful to me. So, and
it's so much fun.
Yeah. Right.
It is like, it's trying on different outfits. It's trying on different masks. It's what an adventure. How cool that you get to have a life like that. Yeah.
It's really very cool. It's really very cool. And also that Zoom is like, during the pandemic even, and that I can teach people globally, is amazing. I have people in Australia who have contacted me for coachings, and people in Japan, and people in, it's like, what? Wow.
Do you find that there's any particular country where the people are the best at the accents? I remember in class, there were a couple of women from New Zealand, and I was astounded at how good they were at pretty much every accent, except they had some trickery over the English accent, which I thought, to me, I'm like, oh, but that one's easy, because I'm from here. Yeah. But I thought, wow, they really adept at manipulating sound. Do you find that there's a particular continent or country that is better than others?
I haven't found that necessarily. I feel like it has more to do with the individual than the general country that they come from. But I don't know, it's possible. Another dialectician might have a different opinion than I do. Sure. But
do you use synesthesia at all?
No, I do not.
Okay. I wondered if that was a thing for people that are really good at dialects, because maybe they see. Wouldn't that be interesting? You saw it if you had it, and you didn't. It was to see every accent in a different color. That would be a cool.
Do you know? I use that. I use tools like that in my coaching, but I don't think that I experience accents in that way. But cool, but I do use it to coach all the time. Like, I'll say to people, okay, when we say this sound, what does that feel like? Is there a color? Does it have a color? Does it have a taste? Does it have what does it smell like? You know, so we talk about things in that way a lot. Yeah.
Get the other parts of the brain on board.
Right. Again, because it's such a physical thing. So we just try to find different ways to put it in the physical being. Right.
Yeah. I love it. How can people find you?
Good question. Let's see. I am on Facebook. I am also on Instagram, the Cooper Shaw on Instagram. I'm on the TikTok, but I haven't quite figured out how to do the TikTok.
You know what? I love accent TikTok or accent talk, where I watch a lot of those where people go on there and power through all these different accents. They say the same sentence and just do it. And really, there's some good ones on there.
Yeah, I know. I'm obsessed with watching them and following them. I haven't jumped in and done my own contribution to that just yet. But let's see, where else can people? I'm on Twitter, but I hardly ever tweet. But Instagram and Facebook are probably, really
if somebody wants to reach out to you to get instruction, would that be the best way to do it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Instagram, probably. Yeah.
You don't have a website or anything?
It's currently under construction.
Aren't we all?
The old website.
The
old website is currently under construction. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram are really great ways for people to find me, for sure.
Well, I'll put links on heyhumanpodcast.com for people to check it out if they have any questions, or maybe they want to take classes from you or get you coach, have you be a coach for them on a project. That kind of thing.
Awesome.
Maybe they want a whole new identity and they have to become.
Maybe.
I mean, that's a good. I think that would be the FBI. Don't they put the people in?
I was going to say maybe I'm not tapping into it.
I'm thinking there's a whole market there.
Untapped potential here.
Yeah, you could help people to get whole new identities. What do they call it? Witness protection.
Right. Jeez, I need to start applying to work with the government.
Absolutely. Get those government contracts, baby.
Get them.
Get that money. Cooper, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me, and I love hearing all the different accents. I just think it's fascinating. I think you're super cool. So it's very cool.
Oh, thanks. Thanks. They're fun. They're fun to do, and it's such a dumb thing. I'm aware that because this is what I do for a living, people are going to ask me to do them. But every time someone asks me to do them, I always go, oh, crap.
You feel on the spot. No, I get that.
No.
Yeah.
So
I get that.
Anyway.
Yeah. That's like stand-up comics always hear, say something funny. Or singers always hear, sing something. It's just
right.
Everybody. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you for listening, everybody. Go out there and try on a new accent. See what happens.
Yeah. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Rate, review, and subscribe to Hey Human on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks. Bye.